All right, thanks for joining us, everybody, for our weekly S&A meeting. I'm just pulling up my agenda here on my other screen so I can tell what is going on. Sorry, I seem to have lost my agenda. Here we are, April 20th. All right, so I'm calling the meeting to order at 5:02. It looks like we have in attendance myself, Alice Williams, Evelyn Roan, Jared Osborne, Brady Smith, Brandon Thomas, and then we also have our advisors, Joey Bryant, Jessica, and Sean, and I don't recognize Nicholas, I don't recognize your name, but thank you for joining us, and Tommy, and then Miss Amber Hofer here again. It is always a pleasure to have you with us. So I need our agenda to be approved from last week's meeting. Can we get a motion for that?
Just to clarify, agenda for this week's meeting. Is that what you're?
Always get those mixed up. Yes, the agenda for this week's meeting, we would need a motion for.
I'll motion.
I'll second then.
Excellent. So we got a motion from Jared and a second from Brandon. And then an approval of minutes from our last meeting on the 13th.
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Yeah, I'll second that.
Excellent. Got a motion from Evelyn with a second from Brandon. All right, and then for reports, for myself as chair, I've only received reports of our requests for today, which I've read over. Do the advisors have any reports?
The only report I'll share with you all, and was hoping to get it addressed before, but we do have 2 of our base funded units who have still not submitted their program reviews. As a reminder, they were given a little bit of a grace period because the due date also happened to be when I was unexpectedly out on leave earlier. But both of those units have been reached out to and have not followed up yet. We have not gotten to their program reviews, but we will be getting there pretty soon on this. So I'm hoping they will get them in before we get to it. Otherwise, we'll have some discussion as a committee on response and follow-up beyond just for me.
Excellent. Thank you, Joey. Do we have any reports from Jessica?
Nope.
Awesome. Thank you. And what about ASCWU? Brady?
Yeah, thank you. So I mean, we got 6 weeks left, so there's a lot going on, but not a lot of time to do it. So first of all, ASCW elections are happening still right now, both for the board and the senators. Amber, correct me if I'm wrong, but we don't have many people running to be senators for next year. So if you are interested, it's still not too late to sign up to do that. Elections are the first week of May, though. So you'll see the election commission tabling. There'll be a QR code around campus that'll take you to vote on presence, I believe. And then ASCW will also be hosting a brunch that week to just it's midterms, so give out free food for students who doesn't like that. But also we'll have QR codes at the brunch stations, so easy, accessible to vote. And then next, just wanted to let you all know there is the Student Engagement and Success Evening of Recognition Awards going on right now. It's not too late to nominate yourself or others. They're open till April 23rd. I can send you the link, and I also know that Joey and Amber probably have the link, and I would assume that also Jessica can get the link too. If you are interested in that, there's some pretty cool awards for that. And then lastly, just another quick shameless plug for committees. Please, if you are interested or you know of anybody for committees in general, we still got a couple of seats. I know there's only 6 weeks, but still you can hit, hey, I was on this committee on your resume. Still looks pretty good. And most importantly, we would still love to have a couple more members for this committee, S&A. So if you know of anybody that would be interested, it is not too late to join yet. So with that, I will yield my time. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Brady. Completely wonderful. Then our next thing is communications received. Do we have any communications received, Joey?
Not beyond people doing their initial budget planning for next year with our S&A budgets. But I did want to point out for you all, but also for the sake of the recording, Amber did put the link to the evening recognition site in the chat on here, which has the information about the program itself, but also the link for the nominations for the whole host of awards. So thank you, Amber.
Yeah, I don't know about y'all, but I went ahead and threw that on an alternate tab, so I can read that here after our meeting. And then public comment. Do we have any? Floor is open. Would anybody like to make a public comment? We'll leave the floor open for a minute or two.
My cat was trying to comment, but she's not human, so it doesn't count.
I appreciated the guest appearance on the camera a minute ago.
I'm certain she'll be back.
This isn't a public comment, Alice, but since it doesn't look like we have one, is it okay if I give a brief overview reminder of what the process is, since I know we have the request coming up? One, because it's not, we haven't had a lot this year, and two, especially with Jared being new, has not been through this process. Awesome. So this is just a reminder for you all, but also as a gentle reminder for our guests who are here presenting. We are going to give the chance here in just a minute. They'll have 10 minutes, which will be open for them to present. They do not need to use the whole time. They can use the whole time. If it goes over, I will typically interject to let them know in the chat, like we're getting close. You all can motion to extend their presentation time if you would like. However, once the presentation is done, then it opens up to questions from you all for the presenters. And so that's asking whatever information you might need to gather to inform kind of your all's decision and discussion. You all will not be deliberating on the request this week. That happens next week. And so just as a reminder, the questions are really for the presenters or for me as the advisor to help answer or clarify. And then next week, and so you want to make sure you're thinking through the presentation of what information is going to be necessary or relevant in the discussion of points you want to bring up or to either motion to approve fully, to modify and give a reason why, or to deny within that. So just as the point, again, there's 10 minutes for that of Q&A. Again, you all can use the whole time. You don't have to. Again, you can extend. I'd say it's really important. The Q&A part of it is vital because, again, that happens this week and then the discussion is next week. And so you want to make sure you're asking whatever. Also, if there are additional things or information, that's why it's important now, because not knowing what it is, I'll just say from previous presentations, sometimes it's information that Amber or Tommy may need to go and bring back and send to us so we have it ahead of time. So just be paying attention, be thoughtful in the discussion, and then we will deliberate and vote on it at next week's meeting. But with that, I'll turn it over to you, Alice.
I do have a quick question. This is the first time we've done this where I've been sitting here as chair. Does that change my position in this?
So great question, and good. Thank you for the reminder on it. So really, no, the part where it is, especially at this part, is, I mean, you'll kick it off to Amber and Tommy in a moment. You have 10 minutes to present. Thank you afterwards. When it comes to especially the question part, absolutely not. I'm totally open for you to ask questions, get clarification. Sometimes it's even to ask the question for the rest of the committee if you know there's information you might know but has not been shared. Because again, we want to make sure we get the chance that it's there and that it's on the record. Because again, that's the other part of why we deliberate at the next meeting, is so that it is open for public comment. If people go back and watch the recording, see the responses, can give you all that. So in terms of the Q&A, nope, nothing changes at all. I mean, other than you will call on people as they're asking questions. So great question.
Just wanted to make sure. Thank you. then with that, I think we're opening up to new business. And so I'm dyslexic or that says 2304. Is that supposed to say 2304 on the agenda?
Yes, and so that's the request number. And this is just for
Okay.
you all to know. The coding, and this is over the course of all of them. This is more an internal on our side. Anytime we get funding requests, the first two numbers are the fiscal year we're in, and so it's fiscal 23, so it's 2023. And then this is our fourth funding request we've received this year. So
Gotcha. Yeah, I thought it was date. I was like, am I seeing a conjoined date or something?
sorry.
Oh, you're good. Awesome. So let's open up the table to Slice/Cat Camp request presentation.
Sounds awesome. Thanks, y'all. And I will share my screen. But hello again, everyone. Amber Hofer. I serve as the director of Slice, you, she, they pronouns. And I'm here with one of my colleagues to talk about Cat Camp today. And so Tommy, you want to do a quick introduction?
Yeah, good to see everyone. My name is Tommy Fernandez. I go by he, him, his. And yeah, I'm the leadership programmer for Slice and also the lead for Cat Camp. So appreciate y'all having us today.
Awesome. So quick overview of Cat Camp and a little bit of Spark Notes. We're going to tell you more about actual Cat Camp, but a little bit of the background. This program has evolved from something that was called the Experienced Leadership Project. And in May of 2021, I went to S&A with the director at the time, and we asked to carry forward funds, and we got approved for $226,000 to carry forward into the 2021-2022 year. Now, Cat Camp is unique because it's a first-year leadership transition program. So any new students who are in their first year at Central, whether that they're like freshmen first year or transfer first year, are invited to attend. Now, it happens in between two fiscal years, which is where it gets a little hairy. So bear with me. So we got this carry forward request for 2021-2022 academic year to use in the fall of 2022. And so the plan was to redesign ELP, broaden the scope of the services, who we were serving, and make it a true transition program after COVID, because we hadn't had one since 2019. Of that $226,000 that we had carry forward, we used $46,000, about 455. We'll show you the numbers. And we piloted 2 models last summer. And so that left about $179,000 of that carry forward that we didn't use last year. And so the request today is us asking for $50,000 of that to carry forward to use this year with Cat Camp 2023 this fall. And so we're going to do, that's kind of a brief overview of the numbers. And we'll also talk about some of the new information that we've gotten since we submitted the request for the carry forward, like a collaboration with Jumpstart, which will also supplement some of the funding, which is exciting. So Tommy, I pass it to you about Cat Camp.
Yeah, so kind of what Amber really mentioned, Cat Camp evolved from ELP. And really the primary goals of this program is for incoming new students to 1, make a connection, make a new friend, 2, have a sense of belonging at CWU, and then 3, to get ready to start their time here at Central. The program, it's a 4-day, 3-night camp where we take students off campus and kind of in that camp kind of environment. And as you can see from this slide, this is highlights from last year's camp that we had in fall. And some of the highlights that we did, we got to do some whitewater rafting, zip lining, and a lot of team development throughout the camp. And so here are some of our photos, and here's actually a quote from one of our participants. Yeah, and here kind of highlights some of our assessment data that we gained from the camp. We actually had our students fill out the assessment form on the last day of camp to kind of summarize their whole experience. And the one that really stands out to me is that first one. And just because that's one of our goals, like I said, is to have them make a connection, but I can go out today, look out in the circuit and see those groups that were formulated in Cat Camp. There was a real bond that was formed at this last camp. So it's kind of amazing to see their friendships still kind of start from Cat Camp, but continue on to the school year. So moving on to Cat Camp 2023. So we are actually doing a location change. The win is going to be roughly the same, September 11th through the 14th. We'll actually have early move-in on September 10th and movers and shakers on September 15th, which I'll kind of reiterate another slide. But yeah, we're changing locations to Black Diamond. It's going to be on the west side in Auburn. And I'll have to say we did Gormley in the past, but this camp is leaps and bounds better with the facilities and stuff that will be at our disposal. I'm going to be happy to talk about that in a second. But our target goal is 150 first year and transfer students. Last year we had about 50 for CAT Camp. So we're really kind of broadening our scope. And that's going to be 80 traditional CAT Camp students from Slice that we're going to recruit. We're actually partnering with Jumpstart to make CAT Camp an experience for them. For those who aren't familiar with Jumpstart, it's a program that identifies low income and first gen students. And so we're happy to have that partnership with them. And we also have a partnership with Westside University Center Supply 20 students as well. And they're going to provide all the transportation for those students and recruitment. Here are some of our campus partners. And the beauty about this is that our students will get to learn about new resources, as well as our partners get to interact with these incoming students. So outreach, how are we going to get the word out about CAT Camp? We have a similar formula to what worked last year. We're going to do a virtual approach with our partnership with Publicity. They're going to print out all the content materials. We're going to be sending out an individual postcard to each to admitted students that they say that they're confirmed they're coming to Central. We're going to have sessions at the newly formatted admitted student days, which is going to be interesting because we actually get to sit down and connect more with parents and students at these days. So I'm excited for that, along with our own sponsored info nights. Yeah, so moving on to our camp staff model, this is actually happening right now. I'm actually hiring leaders for next year's camp. The goal, since we have 150 students, we want to have 15 camp counselors. That'll be 10 students per counselor. And I will have one camp student coordinator with me along as well. And this is a student that actually participated as a leader last year. So I kind of gave them a new role and actually helped in the planning process. And a lot of our former CAT Camp participants are applying to be a camp counselor for this year's camp. And here's kind of our timeline. Excuse me, I'm going to move my camera a little bit. Here's kind of our timeline for over the summer. The ones I really want to really point out is that are the info nights and admitted student days, because they're something that really brand new and really excited for that opportunity, along with week of welcome for the start of fall quarter. So this is actually working out a lot in our favor because CAT Camp is going to be the week before week of welcome. So it's going to be this really, really sweet transition going from CAT Camp right into week of welcome. So they have those friendships, have those connections, and they're kind of ready to start week of welcome and then start classes the following week. And so a little more information about Black Diamond. So like I said, it's leaps and bounds better than our former Camp Quarterly, just because of the facilities that we have at our disposal. The lodging is going to be a little different than we traditionally done in the past. It's really similar to kind of like that residence hall experience, where students will get to room with 2 other participants, and they'll get to sign a roommate agreement. And then our leaders will serve more as RAs, where in the past the leaders actually had to lodge with the students. And so that's something new that we're trying this year that I'm actually really excited for. This is kind of a quick little 4 activities because we have a lot more planned, but we're going to be doing high ropes. They have a pool, so we're going to do a dive-in movie, go in a dark capture flag, and then we're hoping to bring on a CWU alumni to have a fireside chat with the students. And service overview, movers and shakers is, I'm sure you all are aware, it's a volunteer opportunity where students help other students move into campus. So all CAT Camp participants will volunteer for that opportunity. I'll pass along to Amber.
Okay, so I'm gonna go through this really quick. This is kind of our plan for ongoing engagement throughout the year. And so this past year, we really piloted how do we engage with CAT Camp throughout the year, because it truly is a retention program. We haven't gotten our retention data back. We did submit the request, but the students are still here. And we're hoping to get that data at the end of the spring quarter to show how many of our students continued on and register for classes next year. But the plan is to continue checking in with each of the students throughout the year. So we have invited them to welcome week activities. Tommy's engaged them in Wildcat Leadership Academy. Sorry, my light went out. So we're going to continue that, except we're going to partner with, you keep hearing Jumpstart pop up. But we're really pumped about the collab this year. And it was, it's not a grant, but it's state funding specifically to serve low socioeconomic and historically minoritized students on campus. And so we're partnering to offer both. So this is kind of an overview of some of the numbers. I know we're about at our time here. One of the main things that I want to point out is, so in the previous ELP model, the cost fluctuated per student. So if a student wanted to attend, they would pay anywhere between $100 and $180. It was a la carte. And it gave students with more privileged backgrounds access to more exciting events. So if you could afford a whitewater raft, you would pay more money. So we took that away last year. We gave a $50 cost, and we offered a waiver to increase access. So if students didn't have $50, we didn't want that to be a barrier. This year, since we are partnering with Jumpstart has their own separate budget and will be paying for the students attending CAT Camp. And so they're not included in this $58,000 that you'll see in departmental costs, but we want to mirror that. And we had met with President Wolpart a couple weeks ago, and he backed it up. He's like, how do we make this accessible for students? And if there's a way to make it free for them, let's just do it. And so that's part of our hope with this carry forward, is that we would be able to offer all of these services at no cost to the incoming student. Okay. So that is right at 10 minutes. Good job, Tommy. I'm looking at our clock. I think that was well done. Go team. But let's open it up for questions. We have some information on the campers from last year. We did track all of the demographics and identities of the students. So 38% were first gen of last year, 52% identified within the BIPOC community. And so we're hoping to continue to expand that and just increase access on campus. So questions?
Yeah, let's start with Brady.
Thank you both for presenting. This was awesome. I don't want to spend too much because we're not here to critique like the program itself, but just because I think it relates to funding. If you went back to the timeline, I think it said June 2nd was the student leader kickoff.
This one?
Yes.
Yes.
Is that like when the camp counselors would start like their job, that June 2nd date?
Yeah, absolutely. So right now we're going through that hiring process. We're going to send out offers in like the start of May, but yes, that camp leader kickoff is for our leaders to kind of come together and meet each other for the first time.
And can I offer some clarity on that, Brady? So they're not working all summer in the same way an orientation leader worked last year. They're working like 5 hours solely for the admitted students days, and they're actually going to be working with orientation in a separate job to help sustain them throughout the summer.
Yeah, and to clarify even more, like in their hiring offer, we're offering them 100 hours. That's going to be 40 towards the camp, 40 towards training, and then allotted 20 hours to doing like that periodic work over the summer.
Yeah. Well, did you expand on that, Brady? Did we get what you were hoping for?
Yes, I guess the reason I asked the question is as I'm just a little bit concerned about having students start a job right at the beginning of finals. That just seems like, I mean, arguably, like, yes, they are accepting that, they know their limits, but just since most jobs typically don't start the week of finals, I'm just a little bit concerned about. And I realize
no, that's good feedback. Yeah,
it definitely is. And so just to like set the picture, this is kind of just like their first kind of meeting. So it's like a kickoff meeting. We're not really assigning them with any work. Their work will start resuming. We'll start assigning them work once we get to like July, when we have the info nights and then admitted student days. But this is really just to have like an introduction meeting.
Yeah, but we'll talk about it, Brady. It's good feedback. Yeah.
Okay. And then my question actual question relating towards funding. So in the prior, I guess I'm just confused about why money needs to be brought over from a previous year to be able to fund this, because if this was a program that we were in some shape have been funding for a while, I realize that this is a much different look on it and a very much different program. Like, was funding never allocated for this program to begin with in Slice's budget, and that's why we need to bring it over?
That's a good question. So there was some funding allocated within the old CLCE budget, but with the reductions in all of our budgets, reduced staffing, and us expanding the services, that's why the costs are going up. We could supplement the costs in the same way that we have done it in the past, but we would have to charge the students. When we broke it down, it was going to be like $250 per student, and then we could try to supplement the other. I think it came out to $25,000, but that would take away from our year-round programming and continue to shorten it down. But we could try to figure it out, and I think that if we get denied on this, we're going to have to offer a participant cost, if I'm being honest. And so,
Okay, no, that makes sense. I was like, if it was fun, I was just.
oh, it's a good question. I think,
Yeah.
well, in like pre-COVID, post-COVID, like, I think that it's completely valid question. So
Cool. Okay, thank you. That was all my questions.
the other thing I want to add in on the cost increase and the reason we're moving over to Black Diamond, Tommy mentioned the residence hall style setup, but the main thing with that, and one of the primary reasons, is because the students get their own bathroom. And so we have a lot of students that exist beyond the binary, the gender binary. And so they'll only be rooming with 1 or 2 other students, and they'll have their own access to their restroom. And so at Camp Gormley, it just wasn't a good setup for gender non-conforming students. So just want to point that out as one of the purposes. So.
Yeah, Brandon.
So I'm looking at the Excel budget sheet currently.
I can't hear you. Can y'all hear him?
Oh,
Sorry.
I can hear him.
Okay.
Okay, what about now?
I can hear you even better now.
All right, yeah, sometimes Zoom switches off my mic. I'm looking at the Excel budget that was sent to us, and the cost is below 50,000, and then like for expenses, it says the total cost is below the 50,000 you're requesting, but on this slide right here, it says $58,034.
Yeah, absolutely. Good question. I can tell you exactly what happened with that. So in the one that we had initially submitted, we had 70 students that we had planned on bringing. Since then, since we were able to partner with Jumpstart, we also added 20 additional spots specifically with the university centers. And so it increased the cost for those 20 students. But Jumpstart is paying separate for their students to attend this. So Jumpstart's not included in this number, but it's those 20 students from the university centers that we included.
Okay, thank you. And also I'm noticing on that budget, there is a $700 difference from, because it seems like there might have been a miscalculation or something got dragged wrong, because for activities at least, the rate, like the rate per hours and the actual total, there just happens to be a difference on the budget. So like for the pool duration, 2 hours, everything's a 2-hour duration, and then it says 150 per hour. That's 300, and that looks right. But then you go down to zipline, which is 100 per hour, and that still says 300 when it should be 200. And so I found,
I think
the
that
rest-
was supposed to be 3 hours, and so there's probably a
Okay.
discrepancy in the
Okay.
calculations, because these were estimates when we were going back and forth with the Black Diamond to narrow it down. And so we'll look into that, but there could be a discrepancy on our end with that.
Okay, yeah, because that's aside from the pool, everything else, because it looks like from the assumption you can make, it's 2 hours long for each thing, but there's $100 above if it was 2 hours long. So I was just curious about what that was.
No, it's a good question. I know a lot of these are not intended to be 2 hours because we've extended it and we actually have to do a rotation. And so, for example, with the zip line, we're doing 2 rotations for the volume of students. And so we'll actually be expanding that. 3 hours was the minimum, but I don't think we reflected that well in our budget. And so, apologies.
Okay, thank you.
I saw Jared's hand go up and then Joey's. Jared, would you like to take the floor?
Yes, I shall. So I had a whole lot of questions coming into this, and you guys have answered most of them, so good job. You have 8 staff members on your estimate at 100 hours per person, which works out to $15.74 an hour, which is minimum wage. If you're increasing that to 15, that is an $11,000 increase for labor cost. So is that is that
So
reflected
Jumpstart's
in
gonna
your?
supplement the increase other than the two. And I think that so 5 of them, to put this in the easiest terms possible, since I can update the budget and send it over to y'all if that would be helpful. But Jumpstart's ultimately paying 30% of the costs, including the staffing costs. And so when we increased it to 15, and I'm gonna stop sharing so I can see y'all. When we increased it to 15, we had initially planned on 5 of those specifically being Jumpstarts. They're gonna pay for those. And I think, Tommy, correct me if I'm wrong, we added 1 for the university centers. We're wanting our ratio to be 10 students per 1 counselor. And so,
Yeah, especially for
but I
the,
can update it.
yeah, especially for the one university center. One of our leaders is actually going to meet with the professional staff over there so they can kind of give them shared experience of what it means to be like a West Side student or even a student of a university center.
I have one second question. So the location that the camp is going to be hosted at is the Black Diamond Camp. This is a strongly religious affiliated camp. They have a very, very, very Christian-centered mission, which is not necessarily a problem where I'm concerned, but I'm concerned about depending upon how the camp is set up and what kind of iconography they have, we may be in violation of the Lemon Test for entanglement of church and state. So do you know if this particular location has, religious iconography or, Bibles and that sort of thing laying around everywhere? Or do they clean those out for secular programs?
It's a good question. I don't know and I'll let Tommy, because Tommy did a site visit. Camp Gormley was also religiously affiliated, and it's been a struggle for us to find an unaffiliated site, but I think that's a good question. We'd have to find out if there's like Bibles and whatnot. Our intent is not to promote any faith or tradition. But Tommy, you visited. What was kind of your take?
Yeah, and Jared, first of all, appreciate you for bringing that up, because that is kind of like the common theme when we're looking at what camp are we going to choose, because a lot of these camps are officiated with religion. And so that's one of the first questions that I did ask was like, hey, none of these religious themes are going to show up within our camp. And right now we're on a verbal agreement that no, there won't be, but I can definitely get that in writing as well. And that just not for like what we're actually advertising, but I mean like crosses, placed around the camp, for example.
Yeah, that was it for me.
Awesome. Joey?
Yeah. Amber, I know you closed out of it. You don't necessarily have to open it back up. I was going to ask, because you had just mentioned, and I think it was in response maybe to Brady's question, can you give it a little bit more in terms of the projected number of people? Because again, I know on the budget we have, it said 70. You mentioned the increase was about 20 with the Jumpstart, but it looks like on what you shared there, it was projecting 150. Can you give a little bit just to fill in some of that information and what those changes or projections were? And I think you answered this already when you were on that slide where it showed the 150. That does include the Jumpstart students, but the cost from the department is the cost solely from the slice budget. Is that correct?
Yep, and it's solely for the 100 students that we're going to take. So we'll have of the 150, the ones that we will be supplementing from the slice budget are only 100 of them. And so does that help? So 20 of them will be specifically from university centers, and then 80 will be primarily from the main campus, but they can also be from the university centers if students are interested. So
okay, no, that's right. That's why I wanted to make sure it was clear with the different pieces there for the committee. So thank you.
Yeah. The Jumpstart collaboration is still pretty new for us too. And so sorry we didn't get the updated spreadsheet. And so I know that adds a little bit of confusion for folks as well. But the intent is to supplement the costs and try to help increase access and also not use all of the S&A money that we have as well, so that we can be good stewards.
I saw Brady's hand go up.
Last question. Why the focus on West Side centers and not also including East Side centers?
It's a good question. So East Side centers, you're totally welcome to come in. We are sending that information out. Tommy has been in contact with the West Side Student Life rep, Azra. I can't remember Azra's last name, Tommy.
Jabbar.
Yeah. And so the intent is because the camp is on the west side, so students wouldn't have to drive over to Ellensburg to check in, that they're going to host a check-in, I think at the Des Moines campus, and then they're going to bus the students over, and Tommy's worked all that out with Azra. The east side students we will definitely still invite, but they'll be able to ride on the buses from Ellensburg. Any ads, Tommy? Did I miss anything?
No, I think you really summed it up. This was just all about access, really, and just reserving them those 20 spots. And their recruiting will actually begin around a little later than ours. It's going to begin in July. So,
any other questions? I know Joey put in the chat that I think we're at time. Happy to continue if there are more.
I wanted to ask one question. I was curious how y'all collected your data on, I was just very surprised to see 100%, 98%, 100%, 100%, 100%. That doesn't seem realistic to me. How did y'all collect that data?
Yeah. Tommy, do you want me to tag in? You me go? Okay. So we did end of program evaluations. And so we talked about it because we had 100% respondent rate, which is also unlikely when you do any kind of qualitative or quantitative assessment. But we were able to do it at camp so that we could have them actually complete the entire assessment. So in those numbers, one thing to note is that is students that picked on the Likert scale, because it's just the qualitative or quantitative data that we showed a highlight of. But we had them, it was agree and strongly agree. And so I think if
there
we
wasn't a scale to it.
Yeah, there is a scale. The Likert scale was strongly disagree, disagree, agree, or strongly agree. But none of them disagreed or strongly disagreed. And so those numbers are a combination of either agree and strongly agree. But we can break that down if you want to see the shorter percentages. I think the first one, if I remember, was 81% strongly agree and 19% agree. But I think that's a fair question. We actually talked about that. We were like, this doesn't feel real if it's 100%.
Seems too good, you know what I mean? So.
But we could show you the actual breakdown of the data. And the goal is to get students to agree to those sentiments and continue to grow. So
do you think it might coerce students to answer one way if they're being required to answer at camp?
It's a good question. We've talked about it. So we've tried to figure out, so we do it at the end of camp. They're completely anonymous. When we have done them after the fact, we've gotten like a 15% respondent rate. And so it's been really challenging. The qualitative data, honestly, has probably been the best part of a lot of our assessments, because students can talk through their experience and talk through the leaders that they have connected with. And it's more personable and authentic, but no one is looking at them. They put it face down. We don't look at like who has submitted what. They all have the same colored writing utensil. So.
Yes, and as Joey said, we're way over time.
Sorry, friends.
Terribly sorry. I don't have any more questions, but if anybody else would like to consider a motion, now is the time. Not seeing anybody's hands going up. So it seems like that's about it.
I want to make a motion so I can make one more question. So motion to extend the time by 2 minutes.
I saw Joey's head nod. Does that count as a second?
No, I was thinking like, yes, that works as a motion, but I think Brandon unmuting was about to second.
That is the case, yes. Yeah, I'll second that.
Okay, so with the goal being that we're trying to make the cost for attendees $0, I feel like this advantages people with means a little bit more, and we have a very tight budget. So you had waivers for the previous camp for people that were, didn't have the means to go to the camp. Would it be a better funding model for our budget if we had it be that there was a cost, but it could be waived in most or all circumstances? Not as necessarily an income or an assets-based thing, but with strong emphasis that you should try and apply for a waiver and get it waived, rather than it just being like like this is the cost, but there's a waiver, like make the waiver be more central.
It's a good question. We had the waiver, last year was the first year we did that, and we had it part of the registration process. And we were curious about that as well. Like, is this gonna be recruiting more dominant identity folks? We did ask for some demographic information in the registration forms, just in case we had exploding amount of humans that we could try to prioritize and make equitable decisions on who we were able to bring into the camp. But I think that is something we can consider. I'll be honest, I looked up the numbers of the students who were able to pay last year. Most of them were waived last year. And I can look up the specific numbers. Yeah, so it was $1,600 last year that we got from one of the camps. So 32 of the participants were able to pay the $50, but the other one we had $250 that we got. So it was less than $2,000 that we got back in the $50 fee. Our challenge and what we have heard across campus is that any kind of cost associated could be a perceived limitation. And are the students, we've gotten some student feedback and had conversations about the students who would qualify or need to request a waiver. There's a stigma associated with asking for a waiver. And so we didn't want that to serve as a barrier if they weren't going to sign up because they didn't want to ask for a waiver at all. But I think we've been trying to figure out, so what if somebody signs up and they're a no-show, can we charge them the full cost of the camp after the fact? And we don't have a good answer to that yet. But we're trying to figure out that like push and pull of our ethics and morals and creating access for students. So it's a fair question, Jared.
And that is it for me.
Fantastic. I think we're at time for our presentation then. Thank you so much, Amber and Tommy. We greatly appreciate you both.
Thanks, y'all. We're going to head out for the night, but appreciate your time and space and look forward to deliberations next week. Let us know if you do have any other questions. We'll be happy to pass on more information. So have a good evening.
Yeah, good evening, everybody. Thank you.
Take care. All right, and with that, I think we continue on to base funding program reviews. We have 4 of them on the table tonight, starting with KCWU. Was that the one that was filled out by Mr. Oh shoot, I got it right here. But I don't think I can share this screen. So this is starting out with 88-1 the Berg.
Just to interrupt here, where are these located?
Let me share my screen and I will walk you through on the website really quick. Let me close all the other documents that I just had open for the presentation though. So you all don't have to navigate through that.
I also just noticed that my head is giant.
Not on my screen. It's like the Hollywood Squares situation on my screen.
I'm definitely not following the rule of third tier.
Can you all see the S&A website on the screen? Is it sharing that? Okay. So from here, if you go here, Jared, just the CWU.edu services-activities, go down under funding reports on the left-hand column, and then base funding program reviews drop down, and this specific funding cycle is the 22-25. And that will load. And if we go all the way down to KCWU, which is the one we're on, each one of them has the drop downs on it. So, and we're looking at fiscal year 23 specifically.
Okay, and I assume that we're just working through these in order alphabetically.
Yep. And so the 4 we have on tonight are KCWU, Lion Rock, Monash Dash, and Marching Band. I don't have the agenda because I'm sharing this. So
Okay,
is that
cool.
what I put on the agenda?
And so, you know, Jared, previously we had done these with our previous chair in a slightly different manner where we were going through each report collectively on a screen share. We've decided recently to move towards reviewing them in our own time and bringing our questions to the table. So I think all of us, except probably yourself, it sounds like, have read these. Not that we're expecting you to have, it's your first time here. But
I read fast though, should be able to catch up quickly, so we can move on if that's okay with y'all.
Yeah, just let you know what's going on.
And I will say,
appreciate it.
in looking at the agenda, it looks like I typed pep band, not marching band. So we can do marching band next week, since we did publicly announce we were going to be doing pep band. So we're doing KCWU, Lion Rock, Monash Dash, and pep band. This is what happens when I'm quickly typing things.
I do have two more general questions. What is the total budget for S&A that for the allocated funds that we have to divvy out?
That's a great question. So, and you would think it's an easy answer. So let me give you this. Some of this we went over a little bit in the fall, and so Brandon also didn't get this. We do it on a 4-year funding cycle. And so this is year 2 of the funding cycle. And so what happens is each of these groups, and so KCW as an example, came in, they requested funds, they were granted funds. And we can look back at their annual financial reports. We did that in winter quarter. To see the specific, but they're allocated the same amount for the next 4 years. Now, the reason I say it's hard to answer is our allocation that was approved for the 4 years was annually $7.4 million. Where we have been, though, given the enrollment situation and budgets, is last year we, as a committee, made the decision to do, it was a dollar figure, but for easy sake, a 5% reduction in that allocation. Which dropped it to just a little over 7.2 million. And then this year, and this was the plan for this year and the next 2 years after, so the rest of the funding cycle, was to put in place a 10% reduction, but that the committee will look at it each fall to determine if we lower or increase it based on our enrollment and revenue. And so that puts it obviously at just under, when we're talking the 10% reduction, we're about 6.8 million is what we're approving them to allocate out annually right now.
Do you know what the cost per student is for the S&A fees that go to that budget?
Let me look so I don't tell you the wrong number off the top of my head, but yes.
Quarterly, it's $237.10.
Thank you.
That's a quarter. That's so per quarter that they're enrolled. So that's typically fall, winter, and spring.
Okay. The reason why I'm asking this is that if we're evaluating things like the previous proposal, we're looking at potentially what an ROI and that would be, for doing students. So if we're retaining, 100 people, that would make sense to do that proposal. But that would also be assuming that we're retaining all those students.
Yeah, we'll talk a little bit next week when we deliberate on it, because one of the other pieces that we talked about in the fall, and so didn't come up for you, Jared, and also didn't go into depth with it with our request we had winter quarter for Brandon either, is just talking about the overall challenges we have as a university with the debt service ratio, and how some of these pieces, when we're allocating out more than we're bringing in, we have to, as a university, stay at a 1.0 debt service ratio. So all things, again, just for point of clarification for next week's discussion, just to keep us on track with program reviews we're looking at right now.
All right, I'm done with my
Great questions and discussion, though, Jared. I appreciate it.
I saw a hand pop up, but it's gone now.
I was gonna add in a comment and then I decided it's probably best for next week. So just forget I did that.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Brady.
And I do know with that S&A fee, we've worked to keep that where it's at in the past. So I definitely know a lot of people are hopeful that it doesn't go too much up. For base funding program reviews, do we want to start with KCWU?
As in, for clarification, as in, are there any comments for KCWU or?
Yeah, I guess I see that Joey has it shared here, so I figured we just shift gears towards starting to discuss that.
Okay. This is pretty detailed. It's kind of a bummer. This one is kind of a bummer. I mean, student jobs are important to both the student and the organization. that they are working for. And a reduction in hours is never a good thing, but it kind of just has to happen in this circumstance. And I would imagine that we might be seeing a request to replace some equipment in the future.
Yeah, that's definitely about how I felt about this too. I hate seeing student jobs go. I'm a student employee. Brady.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I didn't see anything talking about like funding in the growth and increases section. Like we gave them an extra, what was it, $2,400 in the winter to put on the fall or the spring concert, bringing a headliner on campus. So I'm surprised, and correct me if I'm wrong again, that I didn't see anything about in their growth or increases like permanent funding for that, since I know that is something that they want to do every year.
You are correct, Brady, but to answer, remember, they had to complete these program reviews back in January. So that was before the funding. We're looking at it now because we did the financial piece, but they completed this back, and they may have even completed theirs in December. So great point and question to bring up.
Thank you, Joey. I forgot about that piece.
And Brandon?
Kind of on that similar note, wasn't this also in collaboration with, was it Slice? It was a dual effort when they requested those.
I think it was Slice, yeah.
Yeah, them and campus activities.
Yes,
Campus
which is a
activities,
part
okay.
of Slice, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
So they
So
asked for like 24.
will we be expecting to see that as well?
I mean, I think
Like,
kind of goes back to what Joey just said, is that it wouldn't be in this report since they probably.
yeah, I meant like in the next one, next year's.
Oh, I mean, I would assume so that one of them would probably be requesting the money. I mean, I'm not going to speak for them, but I know just since, I mean, I've been kind of in the talks with them, like bringing the headliner on campus, and I know it's definitely something they want to do every year. It's something that they used to do every year. So I would expect probably next year and probably the year after that for us a reallocation or extra funds to be given. And then hopefully when the quadrennial comes up, they'll ask for permanent funding for that. I don't know which one of them would do it, but one of them, I assume. But again, I can't speak for them.
Do we have any more questions?
Well, I will go pull up the next one just in case there's discussion, and if that's okay, Alice.
No, that's great. Thank you.
And I do not want anyone to feel like we need to rush through, but we did agree we would keep our meetings to about an hour since we're weekly. So I say this because if we don't get to discuss Lion Rock, Monash Dash, and Pet Band, if there is really discussion on it, I would recommend we make a motion to discuss whatever ones we don't get to next week. Because I don't want to rush through it. I'm also not saying necessarily there is points of discussion on them. So.
Yeah, I definitely agree that we should, if we can't get to it tonight, let's move it to the next meeting.
Well, Jared raised his hand.
Jared?
What is the budget that KCWU is requesting?
So they're not, Jared. So these aren't requests. This is, they have to complete an annual program review. So there's a financial part, which is what we looked at in the winter quarter. And these are them giving a review, answering these questions. It's the committee's way of doing some mid-year assessment of the programs for us to see kind of status update, but also to ask questions or give feedback throughout the 4-year cycle instead of waiting until the end when they come to ask for money again. Yeah.
All right, that's it for me.
Actually, I'm now thinking that it might be a good idea to just push these over to the next meeting. That way Jared has some time to take a look at these independently. he is quite the insightful individual, and I think we can benefit from giving him some time. And also this Lions Rock visiting writing series is a bit of a, maybe could have used some more polish, but so unless nobody else has any points of discussion, and don't think we will have any, if we do them right now, I would like to motion that we push these back to next week.
Sounds like we got a motion from Brandon.
Just interrupt you real quick. What are we actually deciding on or discussing if these are reports that are status updates?
Yep. So what the discussion point is, and I know anyone who's parliamentary procedure, specifically Brady, is going to make a face at me because I'm interrupting because we're in the middle of a motion, but I'm still going to answer Jared's question. Really what they are, Jared, is it's our assessment. And so it's points for us to make as part of the public comment on either questions we may have, things that we're like, we want to give kudos, like, hey, this looks great, but more so like if there's areas of concern or like, hey, we want some more information, or why are we doing this? That doesn't seem to fit with what you mentioned your program mission is or what the funding was for. It's our committee we are discussing as an assessment point of it, looking at those answers that they have and giving them feedback too on like, hey, next year, some of it is asking right now, like, hey, can we ask, and Line Rock is on there. So we want Line Rock to answer these questions this quarter so we can discuss here. Some is feedback saying, hey, this looks great. We'd really like to see them implement the assessment thing that they mentioned on there. We think that's important. And so giving them that feedback. Yeah.
Great. And I motion we resume the previous motion that I interrupted.
Is there a second to Brandon's motion is where we're waiting now.
I will second.
Awesome. And Jared, just for your clarification as well, I do know like we do send a lot of our feedback to these people directly. So they do get that from my understanding. So it sounds like we're moving the rest of the reviews to our next meeting.
Well, and I would say just for procedure, Alice, we can either vote or you can ask, is there any objection? And if seeing none, then we can just move forward.
Is there any objection to moving our remaining program reviews to next week's meeting? Next week's meeting is possibly during midterms for some of us.
I'm a graduate student. I only have pain.
All right, seeing no objections. Then we will move the remaining, we have what? Three.
And just for your all's record, I will, since we're moving it, we'll update it so it is marching band, so we don't get confused in order. So we will have, again, if I can get to the agenda without the screen sharing thing in my way.
To be completely honest, I read alphabetically, so I did read marching band.
So we will have on the, I mean, and because we are going to be deliberating, we will have Line Rock Visiting Writers Series, Monash Dash, Marching Band, and I will also put on their Museum of Culture and Environment for the sake of if we have time to get to it. If we don't, again, it will move back to the meeting after that. But you will see the agenda, but just to verbally give you all those will be the 4 on the agenda for next week.
Excellent. That sounds wonderful to me. And with that, I think we have old business. And
there's no old business. We just got to pull that off.
Okay. I always do that. So let's open up for public comment one last time. Is there anybody that'd like to make a public comment? Brady.
Because I forgot to add this in my report. So just to give you all a heads up, one thing that I have been exploring, and I know Joey touched on this earlier, is the S&A fee hasn't increased since like 2017. Obviously inflation has changed a lot since then. So one thing that I'm exploring with the board of directors so the other 4 members plus myself, is creating a recommendation for S&A of what student government would like to see the S&A fee increase. Obviously, that's going to be an informed conversation. And then also kind of just a brief review of starting to look at, are there programs that student government views should be funded by a service and activities fee? And are there programs that we fund that should be covered by tuition? Because a little bit of history, S&A used to be tied to tuition back in 2016, and then the state separated it. So it made sense kind of back then for it to be blended, but we're not part of tuition anymore. And the big reason I'm bringing this to board of directors and then having them kind of give S&A groundwork is we are paid 20 hours a week to do this stuff. Y'all are not. So kind of not have all the work rest on S&A, and instead kind of the board of directors do some of the front end as student government. Obviously, S&A is the final decision maker. We can change it, however, but just so we can start off from somewhere. Just want to give you guys a quick update on that. And I had a second point, and it has completely escaped my mind. So if I remember it, I will email you all.
Thank you so much, Brady. I attended one of those meetings and heard a little bit about that, but I wasn't sure if I was able to disclose that or not. With that, is there any other public comment? Nope. All right, then we will vote to adjourn. Do we need a vote to adjourn? All right, we need a motion to adjourn our meeting.
So moved.
And seconded.
Got a motion
You
from
could do
Brady.
similar, Alice, of seeing, is there any objection? Otherwise, with no objection, you can
Gotcha.
adjourn.
Gotcha. All right. Well, with that, we're adjourning at, what is it, 6:03? Thank you so much for everyone's patience. And y'all have a great weekend.
Have a good week, all.